Talmiz Ahmed now joins me. Appreciate your joining us, Talmiz Ahmed. How do you see, you might have heard the Western political commentary that suggests that Iran is clearly on the back foot. Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader at 86, facing a battle for survival, that this could be the last stand of the clerics who've dominated Iran's politics for half a century. Do you agree that this is Khamenei's last stand?
You can describe this commentary with one word: absolute rubbish. There is an intense hostility towards Iran in large sections of the American media and some European media as well. This dates back to the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Also, it is very heavily influenced by the Israel lobby and by Israel itself. There are also very strong political lobbies in this regard all across the Republican Party and also some sections of the Democratic Party as well. So there is a broad political consensus in the United States that is actively hostile to the Iranians. Actually, what we have seen over the last 7 days of the conflict is that actually Iran has done rather better than what the Israelis and their people had expected. We had been told by Netanyahu that we command the skies and we have carried out massive bombardment at will, etc. Actually, the response of Iran and the massive shower of missiles has really shaken the Israeli public opinion. At the same time, Israel has not been as successful as it had thought it would be with regard to the nuclear facilities. All the reports indicate that the damage so far has been superficial. It is because of this that a desperate Israel has now turned to the Americans and is extraordinarily anxious that the Americans should now join the war on their behalf and actually carry out the damage that they could not do. So it is really a very mischievous Israel that has initiated this conflict, which now wants to broaden it and bring in the Americans on their side.
With due respect, Talmiz Ahmed, you're saying the Western political commentary suggesting that Iran is finished is nonsense. But let me counter that with say, look, the top commanders of the Revolutionary Guard have been killed in the Israeli attacks. Several nuclear scientists have been killed. Close aides, political advisors of Mr. Khamenei, who's now 86, have also been killed in different attacks last year and this year. The leader is not getting any younger. Do you therefore not accept the fact that you've got a supreme leader in Iran who's getting increasingly isolated and he's the one who's getting desperate?
I think this is the way in which there is an attempt being made to seduce Donald Trump into the conflict by holding out this temptation that we are so close to regime change. We just have to do a little bit. But this kind of rubbish we have heard from Israel and pro-Israel elements in the West for the last 20 years. They've been predicting the fall of the Islamic regime so frequently that it has now become boring. They have been successful in killing a large number of people. Obviously, the Iranian security apparatus has been porous and has been found wanting. But since when did a country collapse because a few people at the top were killed? All of us at some level are dispensable, and everyone who is eliminated is very quickly replaced. What Israel does by killing these top leaders is to gain some plus points with their domestic opinion. They like to show to them how great we are, we could penetrate everywhere, but that has never changed the scenario. The Israelis have been at war with Hamas for the last 30 years, have killed a lot of Hamas leaders, but they have never been successful in eliminating Hamas. And exactly the same thing will now operate. You remember when the Americans had attacked Iraq and they finally killed Saddam Hussein, they eliminated large sections of the Iraqi armed forces, and then they were bottled up in Iraq for the next 20 years. So I'm not particularly impressed with this kind of showmanship.
You know, you're calling it showmanship again, Talmiz Ahmed. Are you telling me, therefore, you don't believe that there will be a regime change, that Iranians themselves, the people of Iran, are hankering for change after 46 years of complete control, first by Ayatollah Khomeini, then by Ali Khamenei, that there are instances of human rights violations against women in particular. You don't seem to believe that the people of Iran will now revolt and that will ensure regime change.
There was an attempt at the regime change in its early years when the Western powers and some Gulf states had encouraged Iraq to attack Iran. Nearly 1 million people were killed in that war. It lasted 8 years. The Islamic revolution got strengthened rather than weakened. Now also, who has done this kind of opinion poll within Iraq to constantly keep on saying the Iranians are going to rise up, the Iranians are disgruntled, the Iranians are going to do this or that? No one in the West, given the kind of rubbish that you see in their media, no one in the West actually knows Iran or wishes to know Iran. Iran is a very substantial, a very old, and a very complex country. And the Iranian people, or everyone has said that they are an extraordinarily nationalistic people and they despise external intervention in their political order. Therefore,
Sir,
I reject out of hand any of these loose suggestions coming from interested Western parties that Iran is at the verge of collapse. None of that is going to happen. In fact, Iran has given an extraordinarily good account in terms of the attacks that it has launched at Israel, and the Israelis are seriously worried and seriously found wanting. I mean, they
sir,
have been found
sir,
wanting.
but let me push you again, Mr. Ahmad. The truth also is, let's not deny this. This is an intensely despotic regime. It is seen to be tyrannical, as I said, towards women in particular. It's seen to have never observed human rights. There have been assassinations, disappearances. And therefore, there is a feeling that people are just waiting. It's a volcano waiting to explode. And if Iran is fully isolated in some ways, like its proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas are defeated or on the back foot, in such a situation, even the Russians and Chinese are distancing themselves from Iran. The world is changing, according to this Western narrative.
None of this is true, not even slightly. What the Western powers hate is that countries that had been formally colonized by them or placed under their influence now are sources of resistance to imperialism. We are today at the cusp of a new order, an order that will see the empowerment of new middle powers, Iran amongst them. There is an intense hostility from Western sources, particularly the Americans, who now see their hegemony threatened. And therefore, they are willing to say anything, do anything in order to ensure that their hegemonic order is not disturbed. Where China and Russia are concerned, they are part of the challenge to the old order. They are very supportive of Iran. There is no one who wants to get involved in a military conflict. There are no such alliances as there used to be in the 19th century, which made that assassination into a world war. But you will see that once this conflict is over, and regardless of the damage that Iran is sustains, there will be a greater impetus towards a new world order than we have seen so far.
But Talmiz Ahmed, you know the Arab world better than most. The Arab world, Arab leaders across countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, these countries have had a very difficult relationship with Iran in the past. There's the Sunni Shia angle. What role do you see them playing? Do you see the Arab world also isolating Iran the longer this conflict continues, or just the reverse?
There is a very deep-seated concern all across the Gulf and in West Asia in general about the emerging Israeli military hegemony. No one likes to see that. Up to now in West Asia, you had a balance of power, an effective balance of power. There used to be quarrels from time to time, but they used to be contained. What Israel is now doing, largely due to the domestic compulsions of Netanyahu, is to break all norms and rules and to go as far as possible as it can in wreaking damage and destruction. But there is no strategy. What does the Israeli want? As far as I can understand, the Arab world is very deeply concerned about this monster that has emerged in their midst. They fear that the balance of power has been broken, and now they will look at new balance, new sources of alignments among themselves and with external powers. And I believe China and Russia will be very major players in this scenario as soon as the conflict is done.
So you don't see, Talmiz Ahmed, Iran rushing to sign a deal or strike a deal with the United States on the nuclear issue, desperate to end this conflict. You actually seem to believe Iran is ready to take the Israeli blows and, if anything, escalate the conflict further. Am I correct?
I think Iran would like to do a nuclear deal. Do recall they did this deal 10 years ago in good faith. They abided by all the terms of the deal. It is the United States, specifically Donald Trump, influenced heavily by Netanyahu, who abruptly withdrew from the deal. Much of what has gone wrong in West Asia is due to this single act. But then the Israelis don't want any rapprochement, any engagement between the Iranians and the Americans. They want to constantly have this bogey of Iran, first about a nuclear weapons program and then about regime change. These are, for example, the nuclear weapons program. Consistently, American sources have advised their government and the international community that there is no weapons program. And constantly, Netanyahu has said over the last 15 to 20 years that they are 1 week away from a bomb, they are 2 weeks away from a bomb, they are 10 days away from a bomb, without adducing any shred of evidence in this regard. Now he has picked up the bogey of regime change just to seduce Donald Trump into the conflict. Now, Donald Trump is a complex personality and we cannot predict which way he will go. He could go like we thought 2 days ago that he is now ready for war. And now he has told us yesterday he is not ready for war. He wants to give diplomacy a chance and is willing to wait for 2 weeks. He's very unpredictable. But the fact is that as of now, Netanyahu's gambit has not been successful.
My final question then, in conclusion, just to help our viewers understand Ali Khamenei, this name that is making the headlines every night, Iran's supreme leader. Do you believe he is, as the Israelis portray, a modern day Hitler who must go? Or do you believe he is someone who in his own way is very popular and has transformed Iran? Who really is Ali Khamenei, the devil, or is he a hero for Iranians?
None of this has any basis in reality. Iran has made numerous attempts at engaging with the Americans and with the Western communities in good faith. It has suffered a lot at the hands of the West. And the best example in this regard is the Iran-Iraq war. And yet, after that, the Americans inflicted upon them the dual containment when they had nothing to do with the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait. All of this negative influences have come from Israel. Israel has been a major presence in the councils of the United States and it has built up movements in its favor. Recall here in the 1990s and the early part of this century, you had the neocon movement, a very powerful cabal of intellectuals who used to uphold Israel's interests over the interests of their own country. This kind of name calling to refer to Khamenei as Hitler only because Khamenei is an Iranian patriot. But can the Israelis or anyone deny that under him there have been so many overtures for dialogue and conversation on serious subjects? Do recall here that after 9/11, the best friend the Americans had in the region were the Iranians. They were the ones who guided them with regard to the targeting of Al Qaeda leaders. And they expected that they would get something in return. In 2002 and 2003, there were 16 rounds of dialogue between the Americans and the Iranians in Geneva in order to manage matters relating to Iraq after the collapse of the Saddam regime. And this was called off by the Americans because the American diplomats were terrified that their political establishment would get to know about it. At that time, the Bush regime was very robustly influenced by the neocons. Even after that, you have the nuclear agreement. Did the Iranians withdraw from the agreement or was it the Americans? And then the Americans imposed upon Iran some of the most severe sanctions that can be imposed on another country for no fault of the Iranians themselves. This Iran has been subjected to extraordinary privation, extraordinary violence, extraordinary name calling. It is not a normal country because of this, and yet it has survived. It still wants to engage with the Americans. I would say to you that they would be happy with a deal with the Americans. They've had 5 rounds of
The,
dialogue, and then they were going to have the sixth round when the Israelis attacked.
Talmiz Ahmed, for giving us that comprehensive view, a kind of a big picture view of Iran and why we should not underestimate Iran. I appreciate you joining us. We made this effort to bring you two sides of the story. If you see Western narratives, it's completely one-sided. Our attempt is to get all sides to the story. We had the Israeli foreign minister yesterday. Today we had leading voices on Iran. I appreciate Talmiz Ahmed joining me.